behavior. But it's not just behavior. In methodological behaviorism, we use behavior as a window onto the mind. We try to make inferences about mental states and mental processes based on people's performance, behavioral performance, in various kinds of experiments. So we use behavior as a method, but that's not exactly what we're not interested in, the behavior. We're interested in what we can infer from the behavior about how the mind operates. Chomsky somewhere says that psychology is no more the science of behavior than physics is the science of meter reading. Okay, behavior is our meter. Okay, he's right about that. We're trying to make inferences about how the mind works based on people's behavioral performance. Okay, so that's one thing. Then there's a kind of a piecemeal approach that Flanagan also talks about. You don't have too many courses in consciousness or textbooks in consciousness in psychology, but there are lots of courses on perception and memory and thinking and reasoning and problem solving and emotion and motivation. The idea is that if we kind of figured out how perception worked, then that would kind of ooze up somehow into an understanding of how psychology works. The piecemeal approach, approaching consciousness indirectly by trying to figure out how other things work. In this course, we're going to look at research that focused on consciousness directly, okay, that attacked the problem of consciousness of the full force without any these kind of byways. Third aspect of conscious shyness, which we'll see again in a couple of weeks, is what Flanagan calls conscious inessentialism. That is, there are some psychologists and cognitive scientists who say, yeah, we got consciousness, and it's interesting, but it's not necessary for behavior. Think about the computer metaphor for the mind. If the mind is a computer taking inputs, applying algorithms, and generating outputs, and computers do this without consciousness, maybe minds do that as well. Okay, so maybe consciousness really isn't as important to behavior as we thought it was. Instead, we can kind of get rid of consciousness and just talk about functional relations and the algorithms that produce them. And then finally, we get to what Flanagan calls the epiphenomenalist suspicion, the idea that not only is consciousness not essential to behavior, but consciousness plays no causal role in anything we do, that everything goes on unconsciously, and that at best, what we're consciously aware of is some kind of retrospective account. Okay, so when I say to you, I came to class early today because I wanted to set up, that's not why I came to class early. I came to class early because, I don't know, some asteroid killed the dinosaurs a couple of million years ago and set in motion a set of particle exchanges that led me to the basement of Burge Hall. And I just say, well, you asked me, I can't give you that explanation. That's stupid, right? So when somebody says, why did you come to class early? I said, well, I wanted to get here to meet the students and get everything set up. That had nothing to do with it at all. The epiphenomenalist suspicion is we have consciousness, but it doesn't make any difference. Okay? Now, these are good reasons, I suppose, to be shy of consciousness, but since they're all wrong reasons, we don't have to say too much more about this. Okay, so what are we going to do in this class? We're going to try to do a science of consciousness, that is, to create a public, objective description of private, subjective experiences. That's what a scientific approach to consciousness is. We're going to use behavioral data from various kinds of experiments to try to figure out what the nature of consciousness is and to try to approach the various problems of consciousness. In so doing, we're going to talk about 4 basic problems of consciousness. The first of these, the one that was given to us by Descartes, the relationship between body and mind, which turns out to be more interesting than the philosophers think it is. Okay? The second problem is how we can know what is on somebody else's mind, okay, which is really a problem of social cognition. Well, the way we're going to approach it in this course is How do we know what's on our own minds? Is introspection at all valid? If I ask you why you've done something, are you going to tell me anything that's true? Okay. What is the scope of unconscious mental life? How much of what we think and feel and experience is due to processes that go on below the threshold for consciousness? Then we're going to talk about various altered states of consciousness, sleep, dreams, hypnosis, meditation. Sorry, folks, not too much on drug states. And the reason for that is, well, there are two reasons for that. First, there's very little science there because of the legal constraints on drug research. And the second is, David Presti does that a whole lot better than I do. Okay? So you want that part of consciousness, you go to Presti's course, right? And it's a wonderful course. If you haven't taken it, take it. But you're not going to get too much of that here. And then finally, we're going to talk about the origins of consciousness, how we got consciousness viewed ontogenetically over the life course of the individual, phylogenetically over the evolution of the species, and then in the last 5 minutes of the class, we'll talk about cultural origins of consciousness. But the first thing we'll do is try to figure out what consciousness is anyway. What is this thing that we're trying to describe scientifically and figure out how it works? We're going to do that next week by looking at various aspects of introspection and its problems. We'll see you then. For now, remember, discussion sections meet this week, beginning today and tomorrow. Thank you very much.